So I just saw the latest film in the MCU, Thunderbolts. Now the MCU has had a bit of a rough run as of late, so does this movie steer the ship in the right direction? Let's get into it. So Thunderbolts seems to be a film that Marvel is very confident in and has hired a lot of talented filmmakers to put this thing together. And a lot of the early buzz seems to say that this is the film to really put the MCU back on track. And I think it does do that somewhat. I do think Thunderbolts is actually a surprisingly great film. I have not really been too enthusiastic about the MCU just generally, but especially as of late. With Thunderbolts, it actually became a movie that I was quite excited to see with how they were approaching the filmmaking behind this, getting as much of this on camera as possible, rather than relying on digital CGI, which can look ugly, and it has, especially in many of these new MCU projects. Thunderbolts is a pretty cool espionage action film that focuses on certain subgenres, which is something that you didn't really get too much of as of late, but you got quite frequently in the early stages of the MCU, and it worked to its benefit many times. Here there are themes of mental health, depression, bipolar, and while it can be quite surface level, I wouldn't say it's the most profound commentary on such complex emotions and feelings and mental illness. It does a decent enough job to be substantial within the film, where it feels like it's earnest in its attempt, and I can appreciate that. I think, though, this film is just generally so entertaining from start to finish. The opening sequence I thought was quite special and a real standout in this film. There is a top-down action sequence with Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, which was so well lit and choreographed. The cinematography looked really beautiful. There is some real creativity here, and I really enjoyed that. It's not something you get too much from an MCU film, but here you did get to see someone do something interesting creatively that looks good. I also thought the writing was fairly sharp overall. Yes, there is a little bit of that MCU banter in here. I don't think any MCU film is never not going to have that. And I do think it works to the benefit of the film. There are a couple of jokes that don't work like every MCU movie, but there are plenty that do, and I don't think it focuses too much on that. I think it focuses a lot more on its serious themes, and once again, that works to the benefit of this film and creates a good dynamic between each of these characters, which I quite enjoyed. This group of ragtag misfits coming together for a more noble cause, whether they act selfishly in the beginning. The way that these characters evolve and grow throughout the course of the film is really cool to see, and I do think there is some genuinely good acting in this film. I mean, there are plenty of great thespians in this movie, whether that be someone like Florence Pugh, who is an Academy Award nominee and has given so many stellar performances, has always been great as this Yelena character, and I think this is her best work as this character so far. There is some real touching moments, especially one where she is opposite David Harbour's Red Guardian that was just really poignant, and I appreciated a scene like that being put into the MCU when they usually like to go over for more humor and never really take anything too seriously. When it does it in this film, it was well done, and I appreciate that, and it works so much. I think the villain is fairly decent. I think the way that we explore this character's psyche is very interesting and felt a little bit reminiscent of the Mysterio sequence in Spider-Man Far From Home, but exploring a lot more serious subject matter, and that makes that character a lot more interesting. I think each and every one of the characters put into this Thunderbolts group are great. I love Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. I think this is also this best iteration of this character that we've seen so far, probably since Captain America the Winter Soldier. I think the new Captain America is a great addition. I think he has enough of a interesting backstory that you can understand a lot of the choices he has made and why he has made that. I would say the weakest character in this group is Ghost. I mean, she just doesn't really have too much to do as a character here. She's just kind of used to help get this group out of some tricky situations and some tight spots. And yeah, some of those sequences with her can be great, but as a character, there is a lot left to be desired there. And I don't think this is a perfect movie. This has been hyped up quite significantly, and I do want to just turn it down a notch. I do think it's a great movie, and I think it's one of the best that the MCU has produced in quite some time, if I'm being honest. Probably since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But there are still shortcomings in this movie, like some of that humor not working, like an underdeveloped character like Ghost, or even Taskmaster in this. But the way that Taskmaster is utilized in this, I didn't quite mind. I think it was an interesting development that we got in the movie. But if you're a big Taskmaster fan, you prepare to be probably disappointed. I don't think too many people will be. I think most people will be fine with it, but just a little something there. And I do think when this film does decide to utilize CGI visual effects, it's quite inconsistent. There are some great moments, especially with the antagonist Void. I think the visual effects around that character were really terrific, very inspired and creative. I know that the filmmakers were inspired by the tragedy of Hiroshima, and providing that imagery within the film was interesting to see and felt harrowing whenever this character would utilize those powers. And because the character is quite well written, you can understand why this is happening the way it does. And that makes Thunderbolts interesting because every character in here feels like they can be a piece of shit 1 minute, very selfish 1 minute, but also they can be redeemed. And I think that works so much to the benefit of the film. And I think Thunderbolts approaches that a lot better than something like Suicide Squad ever did. But then on the other end of the spectrum with the visual effects, I think there are particular action sequences. Sometimes, once again, with this Void character, it looks a little bit spotty, and I don't think it's going to age the best. It's fairly good overall, and I think they have done a decent job, but yeah, it's not the greatest by any means, and there are definitely some spotty moments that were quite noticeable. And another reason why I really appreciate Thunderbolts is that filmmaker Jake Schreier clearly had an imprint on this film. It doesn't quite feel like a movie made by a committee, made by a boardroom. This is clearly something with a director's touch, a certain style that was utilized quite effectively, and I really appreciate seeing that in a movie like this. For those of you really following the continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and where this whole storyline is going, I actually do think this sets up some pretty big consequences for where this is all headed, and the Thunderbolts' inclusion into the two Avengers movies that are happening with Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think they're going to play an integral role, and I think the movie does a pretty good job of setting that up. And I think the way it does it is actually quite fun and is going to set up some interesting conflicts with all of these characters that I think was quite interesting. Also, as we all know, the MCU has post-credit scenes. This one has two. And while they weren't the greatest post-credit scenes, they do provide a little bit of insight and a little bit of a teaser for one of their upcoming movies, which is always fun to see. As a whole, I think Thunderbolts is a great film. Not just a great MCU film, a great film in general, a good action film that I quite liked. I enjoyed the performances, I enjoyed the direction. Yes, it comes with a lot of the MCU's baggage and flaws that are in every single one of these movies. But if you're a long-term fan that loves these movies, you clearly love that stuff, so it's not going to be an issue for you. I think this really is one of the MCU's best films since Guardians of the Galaxy, and one of the best films in the MCU in general. I think it was just a great time. I think it's well worth recommending, and even if you're not a massive fan of Marvel movies, this one might be a good time for you. As a score, I'm going to give Thunderbolts a pretty strong 4 out of 5 because I do think this movie is pretty great. And those are my thoughts towards Thunderbolts. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And as an update for the channel, I have finally moved down to Melbourne. I've completed everything. I've been down here for a little bit, but just getting a good situation sorted before I started making videos like this again. I'm still gonna have to change a lot of my backdrop and everything like that, but I really wanted to get this video out for you guys. Expect a lot of changes in the background in future videos as I continue to work on it, but it's great to be down here. It looks like the cinemas down here are awesome, and I'll definitely be looking to attend the Melbourne International Film Festival later in the year, so expect plenty of content there. But that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.